welcome to this video in the QPSMR Companion CATI Up and Running series. And in this video we're going to look at using Telin to actually carry out interviews using the QPSMR suite of programs. So at this point we're assuming that you've prepared your questionnaire, you've loaded any sample file that you have, you've prepared any quotas if you have them, and you've actually prepared the survey for interviewing and set it up on the terminals of the interviewers with their Telin license installed so that they can actually use the Telin software. They wouldn't use the main QPSMR companion software, they'll just use the Telin software. All of those aspects of a project are covered in separate videos: quotas, sample, preparing your questionnaire and preparing it for interviewing. We're now ready to actually conduct interviewing, and interviewers should be able to just click on the QIF file here, and I'm getting a warning here to say the versions are not sequential, but that's absolutely fine. And I can now see that I'm ready to conduct an interview. So as an interviewer now, I can see there's 30 records in the sample file, all 30 are available, and haven't been actually, the fresh means they actually haven't had any attempts to call them yet, and also of course 30 of them are still left to be ready for interviews. If we've had somebody who's been trying to contact but they haven't been available at that time, for example, the fresh would be 29, but still they would be left ready for interviewing. There's a test input option here as well, so that I can test input, and there's various options here that you can use which are worth looking at so that you can see various things while you're working. So let's go straight into getting the first record. We click on the sample file. Now this will access the sample file that's sitting on the server so that we can draw a random record from that file. So I click sample, and here I've got the first person who's going to be used, and you can see that I know about them. I got their name, their telephone number. If I've got a dialer, I can just use the dialer to carry that out, the dialing for me. If I haven't, I would need to dial that and then click on the interview button. And you can see there's various other options here, like hang up, not tried, failed, and so on. So maybe the number actually isn't available, for example. So let's assume I'm ready to go. We're going to look at now proceeding with this interview. So let's click interview, and you can see straight away it says good morning, so there's information up here for the interviewer to read out. They can use their mouse to just click down this left hand side here to do the next thing they want to do. So next, and asking the respondent if they're willing to participate. If they're not, you can press the F12 key and make an appointment. We'll look at appointments later, and that's true at any point in the process. The interviewer can press the F12 key. That will interrupt the interview so that an interview can be conducted at a later stage or continued at a later stage. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So let's continue. On we go. And we're going to say yes to those two questions. And yes, maybe to this question. Now, where a question is multi, this box up here appears so that interviewers know that more than one answer is available. So you see the word multi there. So here we can put in any number of answers that we want to. Here we don't have the multi, so single only is allowed. And we can proceed through the questionnaire here, just using the mouse and asking the questions as we go along. Of course, I'm going here at a speed where I'm not reading out the questions. Again, just got to pick one make here. And here I can pick any number of answers before I continue. And of course, at any point you can go back. So if you enter something wrongly, or the respondent wants to change their mind, you can go back up and you can click the answer that you meant to have. And what Telin will automatically do is reroute through the questionnaire in an appropriate order. So depending on what you've said, it will clean out any answers and route in a different direction if it needs to. Here we can say yes, Now here we've got some questions that should add to 100%, so I'm going to deliberately put in some wrong answers. I'm putting in 50, 30 and 10. And you can see a warning message has come up so that the interviewer can say, oh, that should have added to 100% and you said 50, 30, 10. What would you like to do about that? And I can ignore that warning and proceed, or I can say no and go back maybe up to this question, change it to 40, and you can see now it goes past question 10 because 50, 40 and 10 add up to the correct amount. Here we've got a question where the answers have been randomized, so they look a little bit strange as 3, 1, 2, 4, but that's absolutely fine. They're just in a non-sequential order because they've been randomized. No to this question, and I complete the interview. So that was a successful interview. If I click next now, you can see I get a summary of all these answers. Again, I could go back, I could return to the questionnaire, but let's assume I don't want to. And you can see now that in my sample data, I've got 30 total, but only 29 are left now because I've actually completed that interview. And you can see that we still need to collect 69 more interviews because the target here is 70, which will of course mean that more sample needs to be loaded at a later stage. Now, if a supervisor is finding that quotas aren't being met, we can go into quotas view here and we can see what we've got. So we can see here that I've got a non-member who attended, so I've actually got one of these people, but perhaps members aren't coming up quickly enough. The supervisor could instruct the interviewer to say, well, actually, I want you to focus on members now because our quotas are running a bit short on members. So that will prioritize members to help that catch up in interviewing. So it's a way of supervisors working with their interviewers to say, okay, we need to catch up on some of the quotas. And if I now click sample, you can see I've only got 16 members available at the moment, but let's get those interviewed so that they start to catch up. So let's click now on sample. We've now picked another person. We're ready to interview, do the introduction. Yes, we're willing to participate. Attended the event. Now this time, rather than going all the way through the survey, I'm going to imagine now at this point the respondent says, well, this is fine, but actually I would quite like to complete this survey at a later stage. I'm very busy now. So we've got to question 5, I think I've got to now, and they'd like to complete this tomorrow at a different time. So the interviewer can just click their F11 button, and you can see there's a variety of options here. We can see the answers we've got so far. If they clicked accidentally, they can just return and carry on the interview as though nothing's happened. If they want to continue the interview at a later stage, they can click this button and set an appointment. If the respondent says, actually, I don't want to carry on with this, and they can't be persuaded to finish it at a later stage, you would terminate the interview and treat it as an incomplete interview because you're not going to get that data later. With somebody who says they're going to continue later, would prefer to continue and have an appointment maybe for tomorrow at a particular time, you don't know whether they're going to actually do that or not. They might refuse when you go back to them, but at least you're keeping them as a partial interview. So if we terminate, that will be the end of it. If I continue later, up will come a screen and you can see that I can make an appointment for a date later in the week, and we could say that, well, I'd like that at 1800, and it can be within an hour of that time. So between 1700, or so as late as, sorry, between 1800 and the delay could be 1900. And here you can set some things like the priority, whether it's a high, medium or low priority. So if you've got somebody who's in a hard to reach sample, you might put them in a high priority group. And you can see here how many times you've tried them. And you can also choose whether the person that calls them back is the same person, because you perhaps want the continuity. But if you've got a team that are working different hours, you might want any user to do the contact, which is the default here. Or if it's one you want to hand over to a particular colleague, perhaps you're you've got some of your sample is perhaps high profile business people and you perhaps want your best interviewers to contact them, you might click on someone else and pick a person there who you want them to who you want to do the contact for the second part of or the remainder of the interview. And you can see you've got some other settings here like soon, later, tomorrow, which you can set, and you can set morning, afternoon and evening as well. So there's various buttons you can click. I've actually picked a particular date at a particular time with an hour delay being OK. So now I click OK and an appointment is made, and so the interviewer can read out and say, well, we'll look forward to speaking to you again. Goodbye for now. And that record is complete. And you can see I've got just 15 of these type of people left. So that's really taking you through the process. Let's look at just one more now, another interview this time. Now this time we're going to have somebody who says they're not willing to participate. What happens here? Okay, so they've actually said they're not willing to participate and they get thanked for that, but they are then taken out the sample, and that's one less again that we've got available for our survey. We can look at the quotas. You can see we still have one or two people saved who are potential complete interviews. So that takes you through the basics of using Telin for Telin for collecting interviews that interviewers will use, and we'll look at the supervisor function and how they can see how the interviewers are performing in the next video. Thanks for joining me.